Sensational disclosure by terrorist Nijjar's son. Hardeep Nijjar was in touch with Canadian intelligence officials. Nijjar held weekly meetings with Canadian intelligence officials. One meeting was held just a day before Nijjar was killed. Why was the Canadian intelligence meeting a plumber so frequently? Is Canada being economical with the truth? Explosive Nijjar disclosure. That's our top focus on India First.
So the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service, it seems, held weekly meetings month before Nijjar was killed. One meeting was held on the 17th of June, that's a day before Nijjar was killed, and another was scheduled for the 20th of June, 2 days after he was gunned down. All of this information has been shared by his son. We'll get you details on the story. Also coming up on India First, the ground report the nation has been waiting for. India Today reports from the epicenter of the India-Canada storm. India Today's Anisha Mathur reports from Surrey, where that Canadian terrorist Hardeep Nijjar was gunned down. We'll get you that big story. I'm Gaurav Sawant. First, as always, let's get started with the headlines at 10. India Today's sting operation uncovers human trafficking racket across Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Minor girls sold off between 3 lakhs to 10 lakh rupees by their parents and relatives. Aam Aadmi Party and Congress lock horns in Punjab after Congress leader Sukhpal Khaira arrested as alleged accused in an old drugs case. Congress accuses the Bhagwant Mann government of using enforcement for political gains. After CBI orders a preliminary inquiry into Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's house refurbishment, Arvind Kejriwal challenges the BJP to show proof. BJP hits back, says the Aam Aadmi Party is drowning in corruption. Sixth gold for India at the Asian Games. India wins gold in the men's 10-meter air pistol event featuring Sarabjot Singh, Shiva Narwal and Arjun Singh Cheema. The medal tally now stands at 25. Our top story on the broadcast, a bombshell dropped by terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's son Balraj in Canada. Balraj Nijjar has revealed that his father was in touch with Canadian intelligence agencies regularly. He claims they virtually had weekly meetings months before Nijjar was killed. In fact, one meeting was scheduled and held on the 17th of June, a day before Nijjar was killed outside that Gurudwara in Surrey, and the second meeting was scheduled for 20th of June. But the question remains, why were Canadian agencies meeting a plumber so regularly? And if it was to protect him or sensitize him, why did they fail so miserably to protect him?
A new twist to the diplomatic war between India and Canada over the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Hardeep Nijjar's son Balraj has made a sensational claim. Balraj Nijjar has said his father was regularly in contact with the Canadian intelligence agencies. Balraj, in an interview given to the Canadian media, revealed that Hardeep Singh Nijjar met senior officials of the Canadian intelligence establishment 2-3 days before he was killed on the 18th of June outside the Gurudwara in Surrey. Balraj also said that intelligence authorities had advised Nijjar to stay home. Balraj says he accompanied his father to these meetings. The new revelations come days after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in a statement in Parliament, pointed fingers at India over the murder.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
India has categorically rejected the Canadian allegation of involvement in Nijjar's murder as absurd and politically motivated, saying Canada had long provided shelter to Khalistani terrorists and extremists.
कुछ देश हमारी दी गई इंफॉर्मेशन पर बहुत तेजी से रिएक्ट करते रहे हैं, जबकि कनाडा के बारे में मैं अफसोस से कहता हूं कि हम लोगों ने बहुत इंफॉर्मेशन उनके साथ रेगुलरली शेयर की है, हमारे लेवल पर भी और भारत सरकार के लेवल पर भी। जहां तक पन्नू का सवाल है या निज्जर का सवाल है, इसके बारे में हम लोगों ने उनको कंक्रीट एविडेंस दिया है और वो स्वयं भी जानते हैं कि इन लोगों की किस तरह की गतिविधियां हैं, लेकिन अफसोस यही है कि वहां से जिस तरह की रिस्पांस मिलनी चाहिए कनाडा से, वो रिस्पांस नहीं मिली है।
Hardeep Singh Nijjar was originally from a village in Punjab's Jalandhar district. The 45-year-old went to Canada, allegedly on forged documents, according to investigators. India has been demanding action against Khalistani terrorists, including Nijjar, who are operating from Canadian soil for several years now.
It's extremely curious why Canada's intelligence agencies would meet a plumber so frequently unless there is more to it than meets the eye. Because do keep in mind, Indian intelligence agencies and the Ministry of External Affairs had regularly, not just once, but more than once, shared a dossier on Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was a designated Khalistani terrorist in India.
Khalistani terror, open threats to Canadian Hindus, targeted killings, gang wars, and now a diplomatic war with a friendly nation have put the Canadian government in a tough spot. Bureau Report, India Today.
And India Today's Anisha Mathur is on ground zero. She travelled to Surrey, to the site where terrorist Nijjar was shot at 50 times on the 18th of June. In fact, 35 bullets hit him. India Today reports from that kill site. Anisha Mathur with this ground report.
I'm here outside the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey, Vancouver, where very famously the Canadian media had recently reported that the Khalistan flags and the posters against India had been removed. But if you see the reality, that is something else. While on one side of the Gurdwara gates, the poster had been removed, on the other side of the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara gate, a poster calling for the assassination of Indian diplomats is very much there. It is right here outside the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara gates, along with a poster of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was killed very recently, causing a massive diplomatic spat between India and Canada. Canadian government laws are very clear that while you can call for a protest, you can call for a referendum, you have the right to free speech. What you cannot do under Canadian law is call for violence against any particular identified community. So it is now then for the authorities in British Columbia, in Surrey, to see why such a poster is still up outside a Gurdwara, even though from the other side the poster was removed amid a lot of media reportage here in Canada. Are we only getting one side of the story that is happening in Surrey back home in India? Reporting from the ground in Surrey, this is Anisha Mathur from India Today.
The question also remains, why is no action being taken against Gurpatwant Singh Pannun when that terror supporter, when that terror backer says Hindus leave Canada? If it's against the law, then why is no action being taken against him by the Justin Trudeau government? The question also remains, why were Canadian intelligence agencies meeting Nijjar so frequently? Is Canada being economical with the truth? Let me quickly bring into this conversation Daniel Boardman. He's a senior correspondent with the National Telegraph, joins us from Toronto. And Daniel, Nijjar's son says his father held weekly meetings with the CSIS, the Canadian intelligence agencies, months before he was killed. Is that normal? Is that odd that Canadian intelligence agencies were meeting a plumber so frequently?
Well, I mean, no, it's not normal. I don't have meetings with CSIS every week. I don't think I ever have had CSIS agents come to my house, but a lot of this can kind of be explained through like a bit of an Occam's razor, like, of course that kind of happened. Because, yes, do I believe that Hardeep Singh Nijjar was getting lots of death threats and heat on him? I can believe that. Why can I believe that? Because I can see a video of him calling for the death of Hindus, violent separatism, and supporting suicide bombings. So if you're, making video content as a content creator or plumber, and your content is, I support suicide bombings and violence against this particular group of people, some people in that group you're calling for violence against are going to call for violence against you. Now, none of this is good. None of us should be calling for violence. Hindus shouldn't be threatening Sikhs. Sikhs shouldn't be threatening Hindus. Khalistanis this. We none of us want this. But it could make sense how someone who went around was, suspected by the Vancouver Sun in 2016 of running a potential terrorist training camp, videos of AK-47s, videos of dangerous speeches, of course that's going to rub some people the wrong way. Right. And then you add into the fact that there's a lot of inter-violence between the Khalistani gangs, so no wonder his, life could have potentially been under threat. Now,
be that as it may, Daniel, why would agencies be meeting him so frequently and no follow-up action be taken or at least be known in public domain? So, for example, one meeting, according to The Sun, was held on the 17th of June. That's one day before Nijjar was killed. And the other was scheduled for the 20th of June. Now, does this indicate he was either an informer for the intelligence agencies or the agencies were seeking information?
I mean, it's impossible to know. I wasn't there in the room. It's a complicated situation, and it's one of those, you can think of 10 different things being possible. And, I can understand the frustration of Indians and also Canadians. Like, why are so many resources going to protect these guys who are so clearly a problem? And why are we not trying to protect the people they're threatening? More like the division of resources in terms of our intelligence assets are questionable. I will grant you that. It's impossible to know. We're probably never gonna know the content of these meetings. But as I said, there's sort of an Occam's razor to this, which is, he's on video calling for violence and death against a particular ethnic group.
Yes.
Of course he'd face some blowback for that. Like, we can all understand, you're on video supporting a suicide bombing. People aren't going to be happy. So, how seriously do our intelligence agencies take the Khalistani threat? How much do they understand the Khalistani threat? How much political will is there to do something about the Khalistani threat? All of those questions are prominent in the minds of a lot of Canadians because...
Oh, I'm glad... I'm glad at least those questions are being asked in Canada, because if there was a threat, and taking that theory forward, that there was a threat to Nijjar's life, and if intelligence agencies were aware of it, would they not have deployed the police to protect him? Would they not have been giving him personal security detail? Something, it just seems, doesn't add up, that they're meeting him frequently, but... and I want to understand from you, since you're reporting the story, was any visible security provided to him on ground?
That we don't know. Also, you have to keep in mind this is Canada, not America. So here's a side story that might give you a bit of an insight into Canadian security approaches. When the Toronto Raptors won the NBA championship in 2019, there was a big parade in Toronto. Justin Trudeau was there, the Premier was there, he was making a speech on stage. During that, there was an actual gang shooting like a block away, gunshots going off. And it's not like RCMP and CSIS rushed to the stage and pulled the Prime Minister off when we went to DEFCON 1 and this massive security apparatus went into functioning state. Everyone was kind of just standing around twirling their thumbs in the air. So this is like the level of like competence we have when guarding the literal Prime Minister when there's active shooting within the vicinity. So the incompetence of the Canadian police among matters of extremism and like this, it's unfortunately nothing new in the last 10 years with the sort of depolicing strategy, this sort of police cause crime, not stop crime mentality, where we're just, we're beating our police officers into the ground and pushing them out of duty. And you also have a culture where like police feel like, hey, if I step in the middle of some Khalistani gang violence between these people, and I end up shooting one of the gang members as I got shot at, like he knows that he'll be on the CBC as like the next Derek Chauvin, and he's just murdered an innocent person. So I think there's a large factor like that where a lot of, I think, police officers in Canada wouldn't want to do a dirty, complicated job, because even if they do it well, there is no reward, there's no win for them there. So,
but are the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the investigators in this case, or the intelligence agencies, the CSIS, are they expected to clarify if what Nijjar's son says is true, that Hardeep Nijjar feared for his life, that he had been sensitized about a threat to his life? Would these agencies be questioned? What action did they take on ground or didn't take on ground?
Questions will be coming, but it's Canada, so you won't get answers to those questions for like 3-4 years. They're going to try and bury it and release this information. It will become public, but they're going to want to release it at a time when we've mostly forgotten the story, and it can all just kind of go into the ether and be like, oh, we might have got some things wrong 3-4 years ago. Oopsie doodles. That's kind of the way I see Canada handling this in our current environment.
So is there renewed focus on these Canadian terrorists like Hardeep Singh Nijjar, on these Khalistani terrorists? Daniel, stay with me for a moment, because I want our viewers to understand the two different perspectives. So Western media refers to Hardeep Singh Nijjar as a Sikh leader, an activist. Some say he was a plumber. The Indian media, the government of India, they're very clear that Hardeep Singh Nijjar was a terrorist under the UAPA Act. He'd been proscribed as a terrorist. The Canadian government calls him an ordinary Canadian citizen who was executed by foreign operatives. Government of India says he's a designated terrorist, he's a fugitive from law. But was this a gang war that led to his death? What actually happened? Let's bring you both sides of the story, as always, on India Today.
Group photograph, all posing on a rooftop. Trees, an open area, a gate and dome-shaped structures in the backdrop. When referred to Google Earth imagery from 2013 with specific coordinates, exact features show up. Imagery of the same location 3 years later show no trees. That establishes that Nijjar visited this location in Pakistan almost 10 years ago, barely a 4-hour drive from where Osama bin Laden was eliminated by US Navy SEALs a few years prior. By comparing the first geolocated picture with the second image featuring Hardeep Nijjar holding the assault rifle, it now becomes evident that he's wearing the same t-shirt and turban in both photographs. And that lends a high degree of credibility to assertions that Nijjar's AK-47 picture was taken during this same visit to Pakistan. This in turn punctures theories spun by Nijjar supporters of his being a selfless volunteer and a devotee going on a pilgrimage. His visit to Pakistan more than just a religious tour when he pictures himself brandishing an assault rifle. With Ankit Kumar, Bureau Report, India Today.
Daniel, is there closer scrutiny on these Khalistani elements in Canada? Are people asking the Trudeau government questions about India's allegations that they're being too soft on these Khalistani terrorists, or leaders like Jagmeet Singh, who see themselves as future prime ministers of Canada, ensure that there's no action that's taken against Khalistani elements?
Yeah, I would say the awareness of this problem is growing. The primary focus of a lot of Canadian media is how did Justin Trudeau invite a literal Waffen-SS Nazi to be honored in Parliament, and why is he not taking responsibility for it? So that's the main scandal. But growing, not in very rarely in mainstream media, a few penetrated through, but there's been a growth of online media trying to be stifled by the government, where these conversations are happening, where people are more curious, where they take a look and there's actual journalists who are like, oh, here's the video of him supporting, again, the suicide bombing, and it's actually a more interesting story. So yeah, I do see it's growing. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, the fact that the Prime Minister did something even crazier than destroying our entire diplomatic relations with a strong, important ally, that's like the number one story right now is, how did we get a Nazi into Parliament? Yes. How did they not vet him? But it's piling on this. It's with this wave of disaffection with Trudeau. I think people are also looking to these problems. And I will say on the is he a plumber, is he a terrorist thing? Listen, I've seen the dossier. I'm going to talk from a pragmatic point of view of trying to fix this problem. The terrorism designation might not be the most productive because it gives the chance for them to claim asylum and game the system. And then terrorism charges are much, much harder to prove than normal charges. Like, we might be better getting them on drugs, violence, harassment, gang. Like, there are legitimate crimes that they are actually committing that we could get them on. And when we throw terrorism in there, it adds a whole other bar that you have to prove, and then it will become a national case that it may be more productive if we can kind of come to an accord and say, okay, terrorism, not terrorism, but what they're doing is they're openly advocating for violence. Yes. They're harassing identifiable groups. They're involved in organized crime, drug running, illegal guns. This is the things that we could actually probably take care of in a more efficient manner.
So,
and as long as they're going to jail.
Action is taken against people like Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, who's openly threatening Hindus in Canada. And of course, if the Justin Trudeau government is going to put evidence out in public domain, if there's pressure to put that evidence in public domain, or can Justin Trudeau actually get away with the spit and scoot tactics? We'll track that story very closely. Daniel Boardman for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. We'll be tracking this story very, very closely.